So the other day I had somebody say to me something along the lines of, "Careful, I think you're really gonna regret doing this." And I thought that was an interesting comment to make, because one of the things I really do live by is the idea that more often than not we regret the things that we didn't do rather than the things we did. One of my favorite quotes that I've kind of taken to heart is this idea of, let's die with more memories than we have wishes. Because I really do think that is a problem more people have than anything else, is that there's things that they aspire to, there's things they dream about and hope for and would love to achieve in their life, but then they never get around to doing it. And they often have good reasons for why they don't. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of becoming too powerful, too awesome, too amazing. Sometimes they feel like they have to give up an aspect of themselves that they've really come to identify with. So for example, if you always have identified as somebody who never takes risks, who never takes chances, and you suddenly want to try to take a risk, it comes in conflict with your idea of who you think yourself to be. And frankly, I don't want to live that way. I don't want to live my life regretting the things that I could have tried. And yes, maybe in being bold and being brazen and as someone once told me, Kaylin, you rush in where angels fear to tread. I could get hurt. I could do things I wish I wouldn't have. But the one thing I won't live with is this fear of, did I not really live? In my first book, Journey to the Ecstatic Self, I have this quote that I really love, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but to paraphrase it, it goes something like, let me arrive at the end of my life, battered, bruised, and broken. Let me have used this body in every way that I can. Don't let me arrive at my death like a shiny new car recently pulled off the lot. I want to be dinged up, banged up, and used up. That I drained every ounce of vitality out of this body, out of this life, and to have said, yes, I've truly lived. Because I think that's one of the bigger existential fears that most of us have, I think. Wouldn't you say? To fear that we reach the end of our life and realize we never really lived the life we wanted. We lived the life that our parents wanted, or our spouse wanted, or our third grade math teacher wanted for us. How I know it's something that I constantly have to do to myself is re-evaluate my programming and say, is this something that is intrinsic to me, something that brings me joy? Or am I doing it because I think somebody else would approve? Or somebody at some point, somewhere in the past said, if you do this, then you'll be happy, you'll live a meaningful life. And that's how people end up in careers they don't want, driving expensive cars they don't want, partnered with people that might be nice but don't really fulfill them. How many of us spent our early years, our teenage years, our young adult years constructing a facade, constructing a life that we think will bring us joy, but isn't actually us. We crave the concrete, we crave the stable, we crave the approval of those whose ideas matter, not realizing in the process that we were sacrificing the person whose opinions actually matter most, our own, because either we were too afraid to pursue them, or we didn't even know what they were, or we didn't take the opportunity to explore long enough. You know, I watch people settled into loveless marriages and in dead-end jobs that they loathe getting out of bed to go to every day. What would happen if they took the risk and said goodbye to those things and said yes to the things that actually lit them up, that actually brought them passion? What if they said yes to that thing that they might regret later on? What if they were willing to blow up what was safe for them and risk the potential for greatness? But that's kind of how I've always operated. I've thrown away perfectly satisfactory relationships. I've thrown away guys who are nice, polite, well-off, handsome, good bodies, kind, thoughtful, generous, because I knew they weren't enough. They weren't what I could sense was out there, that there was a greater potential that I could find. And because of my willingness to be brave and my willingness to say, this is wonderful and you're wonderful, but I need more, I ended up in the most amazing relationship with somebody who I every single day wake up feeling blessed and lucky to be partnered with. Had I done the safe thing, I would have stayed with people who I would not have been nearly as happy with. Had I done the same thing, I would have stayed in careers like pursuing acting, which ultimately was really toxic for my soul and really misaligned with what makes me happy and brings me health and well-being. Had I done the safe thing, I would have stayed in toxic friendships and connected to a spiritual community that was horribly, horribly manipulative. I almost never regret anything I've tried. The only things I've ever truly regretted were the things I wasn't brave enough to actually pursue. And if you've watched enough of my videos, you know that I've come to identify the hallmark of a well-lived life as not being the amount of wealth, the amount of fame, the amount of awards I've accumulated, but instead a well-lived life for me is determined by how much courage and bravery with which do I live. How courageous am I? And so, fuck those people who tell you you'll regret it if you try this. And honestly, I don't think there's anything sadder than looking back on your 80th birthday and realizing, hell, I never lived. I never went on that trip. I never dated that person. I never told that person I love them. I never ate that food. I never had that experience. I never bought that thing. I never did this thing that really fascinated me. A sad life is not the one for somebody who strove and failed. A sad life is for the spectator who never stepped into the arena. And to quote Theodore Roosevelt, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again because there is no effort without error and shortcomings, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." Regrets are a waste of time. They're the past hurting you in the present. And while you make choices that in hindsight you realize I could have done better, the hardest ones are the ones you never actually made. So as you think about your New Year's resolutions, perhaps this is a good one to ponder. How can I live more boldly? How can I live with courage? And how can I be the person that my future self will be proud of? Because that's who I want to be, and that's what I want for you.